Now we're on Daf Pei Aleph Amud Beis. Ela filu shochet ola. Let's reverse the sequence. He shechts the ola first. Now, if he shechts the ola first, then L'chori should be chayav for shechting the chulin. No. Gemara says, Afil shochet ola ve'akach shochet chulin pot. Why? Why would Reb Shimon say you're potur? Because the kodshim is considered shchita sheina ruya. Shchita kamaisa lav shchita bas achila. Oh. So now the Gemara is suggesting that since an ola is kula kolil, and it can never be matu the basa, then by definition, shchitas ola is shchita sheina ruya, and therefore there's no iser in shechting the vlad on the same day. However, Rabbi Yaakov Omer Rabbi Yochanan, achilas mizbeach shma achila. In other words, the shchita of the ola is considered a shchita ruya, even though it does not permit you to eat the basar, but nevertheless it permits you to be maktir the basar agabi mizbeach, because before the shchita there's no way that you can be maktir the basar and kula kol agabi mizbeach, and achilas mizbeach shma achila. My time, is there a pasuk and a biblical source for this halacha that shchita of the mizbeach is also called that achilas mizbeach is also called achila? My timer. Tiyama krov im hey achal ye achal, a double language mivsar zevach shlomim. It's almost like say that he will eat and it will eat. B'shtei achilos hakosim, there are two achilos. Echad achilos odom, echad achilos mizbeach, and therefore, if we upgrade and categorize the shchita of the ola as a matir of achilas basar, albeit not to Adam but to Mizbeach, that enough makes it into a shchita ruya, such that now when he shechts the offspring, he's chayav malchus. And that leads us to the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah is going to give us a whole bunch of cases where the shchita is not matir the basar. Number one, they found the animal to have a hole in its lungs. Number two, Ashochil Avodah Zarah, the halacha is that if you shech something from Avodah Zarah, it's osir b'ano. It's called cherem. You can't get any benefit from it, so it's not matir the basar. Hashochet paras chatos. Paras chatos is another word for paraduma. Now, after he shechs the paraduma, the para is now burnt. Not in the normal place where you burn kodshim, but wherever it is on the way to to where it has to go, and you're not allowed to benefit from that shchita whatsoever. Then we have the case of shochet shor niskal. Shor niskal means there was already a gemar din that this shor killed a man, and therefore the shor has to be put to death. And if somebody goes ahead and shechts the animal, no hano, it's osur b'ano. So therefore the shchita itself is not matir the basar. Another case is egla arufa. After they do the arifa on the egla, it's osur b'ano. However, chachamim mechayvim, which I assume is because the chacham hold shchita she'ena ru'uya shmeich shchita. Now again, we have to emphasize as an introduction to the next part of the Mishnah that in all these cases above, where the chachamim recognize and validate the shchita so that he's going to be chayav for shechting the offspring, mitzad the lav of osav espino, in all these cases, the shchita per se, if you could isolate it, was a perfectly good shchita. However, Hashochev in his navla biyado, if he violates one of the psulei shchita, and therefore the shchita is not a meaningful shchita, and the animal is called nevela, then in this case, even the chachamim will agree it cannot generate an iser of oso vespino. Well, hanocher ha'oker, instead of shechting the simonim, he simply rips out the simonim. Right, oker and me'aker are two different ways of ripping out the simonim. One is by piercing them, the other is by physically removing them. Then that shchita is not a valid shchita, even according to the Rabbanan of Rabbi Shimon, and Potter mishum oso vespino. If he goes ahead then and shechts the mother, I'm sorry, let's say the offspring, if you want to say it like that, doesn't matter which sequence, then he's Potter. Why is he Potter? Because there was no first shchita. He didn't do a shchita. It looked like a shchita, but it wasn't a shchita. So that's the difference between nitrafa and nisnavla. In the case of nitrafa, the shchita was a perfectly good shchita. Not only that, as we've discussed many, many times, it's mitayer, the mituvus nevela. The carcass is not mitayer. But in the case of nisnavla, it means that he did one of the psulei shchita, so the shchita is not a shchita, and therefore, even according to Chacham of Shimon, a shchita shena ruya, lav shei shchita. Now I'm going to talk about a machlokes between Rav Shimon Lakish and Rav Yochanan regarding a person who is shochet l'shem avodah zarah. Omer Rav Shimon ben Lakish lo shanu el shochet rishon l'avodah zarah v'sheni l'shulchano aval rishon l'shulchano v'sheni l'avodah zarah potter the kim levi the rabbin. Reish Lakish introduces another element into the equation. What happens if the second shchita of the offspring was for the purpose of avodah zarah? In such a case, he's chayav misa, because shchita of avodah zarah is one of the four avodah. So chayav misa, and then the Torah says mishum risha achas kim lev rabin. It means that we cannot impose upon you a second punishment, and therefore you can be off the hook as far as Malchus is concerned for oso vespino, but not because there's no oso vespino. We're holding now that according to Reb Shimon, just 1 second. Forget about Reb Shimon. 1 second. Right, according to the Rabbanan of Reb Shimon, as long as the shchita per se, if we could isolate it, was a perfectly good shchita, then it generates an iser of oso vespino, even though the first shchita could not be matir the basar, because shchita sheina ruya shmei shchita. If that be the case, l'chora you would have said he's going to be chayiv malchus in the second shchita, which was for avodah zarah, but the answer is kim lev the rabbin. So Rabbi Yochanan is a little bit perplexed as to what Reish Lakish is telling me. I mean, everybody knows Kim Leib the Rab Mine. Zu afilu tinoka shel beis Rab and Yodanos. So Ella, if you want to get a chiddush in the Rabbanan Shita, then pa'amim shafilu shochat rishon l'shulchano v'sheni lavodah zarah chayav. Let's come up with a scenario where the second shchita was for avodah zarah, which means he's chayav misa, and for desvegen, nevertheless, he's going to be chayav for oso vespino. How? He cannot be chayav misa for avodah zarah because they gave him asra for oso vespino. If I get a hold of this, these Adam here who gave the wrong asra, I'm going to bash them over the head. He should have given an asra for avodah zarah. Maybe they didn't suspect that he would actually do it, so they gave him a low-profile asra of Moso Vespino. So in such a case, says Rabbi Yochanan, there's no chiyuv misa for avodah zarah, and likewise, there's no kim lebi the rabmine. Memela, he's chayiv for Oso Vespino, and he's going to be chayiv malchus. Now, if Rabbi Yochanan is reframing the case in such a way that there's a chiddush that he could be chayav for the second, chayav malchus for also Espino for the second shchita, then the implication is Reish Lakish in that case would say he's potter, even though there was no asra for avodah zarah. Rav Shem ben Lakish, Omar kevan dechi asu be potter kilo asu be nami potter. So this is the principle, which is a sugya in Ksubis that we learned way back when, called Chayve Misa Shogigin. The lumdus of it, in this case, I think will just make it easier for us to learn Pshat. The lumdus is the following. How do you understand Kimlev the Ramine? Does it tie the hands of Bezdin to say that Bezdin can't mete out two punishments, therefore they mete out only the higher punishment, the more profound punishment? Or no, it's not halacha in Bezdin, it's halacha in the Avera per se. If you did one action and there were two Averos, then the halacha is you only get punished for the first Avera, and the second Avera, which again was done simultaneously in the same action, but it was a lower level Avera, doesn't even generate an onish at all. So that Rish Lakish holds, like that second definition, that this is not halacha in Bezdin, that Bezdin can't mete out two punishments, but rather it's halacha in the Avera per se, that if this Avera could theoretically generate Misa, there may be technical reasons why it does not, but that's irrelevant. It's a Maisa Hamachayev that generates a Chiyav of Misa, then we apply Kimle B'Rami. And for that matter, what we're going to see is that even if you use a Shogeg on Avodah Zarah or Shabbos, whatever it might be, we would still knock off the Chiyav that he was mazed on, and we would apply the principle of Kimle B'Rami according to Reish Lakish. The Azdu Tamayu, the Chi Aser Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came for Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he reported the following machlokes: Chayve Misa Shogegin. If let's say a person violates Shabbos b'shogeg, or Chayve Malchus b'shogeg, or he incurs a violation of a chiyuv Malchus, but it was b'shogeg, vid davar acher, and simultaneously violated another avera. Rav Yochanan Omer Chayev, Reish Lakish Omer Patur. Rav Yochanan Omer Chayev. Again, I don't know exactly I don't know why the emphasis here on holo asube, but I guess it means that if he didn't get asra, then we assume he's a shogeg and it was unintentional, and he could be never be chayiv for chil Shabbos or whatever the avera chamura is, and therefore Bezdin now will implement the lower level chiyuv because they cannot implement a higher level chiyuv. And we don't apply Kim Levi Ramin. But Rish Lakish Amar Potter came with the Asube Potter, Kilo Asube Nami Potter. We don't look at whether or not Bezdin is going to mete out the more severe punishment, but rather whether or not the Maisa Vera would generate that Chiyuv Misa if he had done it b'mezid with Asra. Utsricha. Now the Gemara wants to know, why do we need to repeat this machlokas between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan here when we have it in general? But we need both. Why? If we only had the machlokas between Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, in this case, where he did a shchita, l'shem avodah zarah, and at the same time it was a shchita of also Vespino, because I would have said, V'haka Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, here's where Reb Shimon ben Lakish holds that since he would be chayv misa, theoretically, for avodah zarah, therefore he's completely exempt from the malchus for oso v'espino. But in the case where, so now we have to go back for a moment to the drawing board. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. These are the two key words: monetary liability. So the machlokas that we quoted here from Rav Dimi when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel is a machlokas in davar acher. Davar acher means a monetary liability. Like, let's say, for example, without permission, he shechted his friend's animal, and it was nevela. And let's say he violated a law for shechting the animal, whether it's for avodah zarah or for osav espino, whatever it might be. Then we have machlokas for Rav Shimon ben Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan whether or not he incurs monetary obligations because he stole his friend's animal and killed it. Aval beha ema modulei Rabbi Yochanan. Maybe Reish Lakish would have to agree to Rabbi Yochanan. In this case, he's chayav to compensate the owner of the animal that he shechted without permission and he made it into a nevela, and now the guy lost the whole value of the animal. Because this is a case of misa lazeh umamen lazeh. In other words, that person who took a financial loss, he doesn't have any compassion on me because I, at the same time, chas v'shalom, violated a nisa. And therefore, we would say that here in this case, even Reish Lakish would agree that he's chayav. And if we had the machlokas in the opposite case, Rabbi Yochanan, maybe Rabbi Yochanan's talking about a case where there was also a monetary liability, and that's where Rabbi Yochanan says he has to pay up because it's misa lazeh and mammon lazeh. But in a case where we're talking about two bein adam lamakoms, meaning that he violated avodah zarah and osav espino, which are two averos, then it could be that Rabbi Yochanan would agree that in this case we cannot mete out the lower punishment, and we're going to apply the principle of kim ram. Now we go back to paras chatos, and the Gemara says the following. I don't understand. It says that on this whole list of shchita sheina re'uya, which according to Reb Shimon does not generate osav espino, on the list of the shchita paradumas, Gemara says paras chatos shchita sheina re'uya. Why do you consider this a shchita sheina re'uya? Vasanya, we learned in a brisa, Reb Shimon omer para mitama tumas ochlin hol v'hoisel shas hakosher. The Omer of Shimon ben Lakish on the top of Pei Beis, Omer Hoyer of Shimon Para Niftes Al Gabi Marachta. It's really interesting. In the process of bringing a Para Duma, I'll just read to you the whole process. Where am I? Okay. The shchita of the of the paraduma was implemented in a designated place on Har HaZeisim, which faced the Pesach HaMikdash. Then it was burnt on a pyre. Its ashes were mixed with water. The water was sprinkled on people and on utensils that had become tummy through a corpse, tumas mes. Now, the slaughtered paraduma is not fit for consumption. But the complication here is, as the Gemara is asking, the paraduma is subject to pidia. You could be poda it. Why would you want to be poded? Because you found a better paraduma. I think I forgot the name of the yishuv where they have three of them already. Right? So he says the following. Reb Shimon says that the paraduma is mitame tumas ochlin. And why is it mitame tumas ochlin? It's not royal achila. After you shech the paraduma, you're going to burn it on the fire. But the answer is you could redeem it, and that's called hol v'hoisel shas hakosher. And not only that, Reish Lakish on the top of Pei Beis adds that Shas HaKosher means the par is niftes al gabi marachta, meaning you're about to burn it on the wood of the pyre, and then you find another par aduma and you want to take, it's a better deal. So what do you want to do? You could be podeh the par aduma, the first par aduma. And therefore, there's a possibility that you'll be able to be matir the achila of the basar of the paraduma after its shchita. And how so? Because you're going to swap it for another paraduma. And this first paraduma will now be subject to pidia, and it's niftes. And therefore, Amar Reb Shaman ben Abba, Amar Reb Yochanan Paras Chatos Eina Mishnah. Take it out of the Mishnah. Meaning that even Reb Shimon would hold that if you shechted two cows, or a cow and a calf, we'll call, and the cow that you shechted was a paraduma, and then you shechted the calf, you'd be chayav. You'll tell me that the shechita, the paraduma, is ein ru'iyah because it's not matir the basar. The answer is, it theoretically could be matir the basar if you went ahead and were poda it. So that gives the status of the shechita as a valid shechita that's matir the basar. And in fact, if you went ahead and you were poda it, that would be the din that you could eat the basar of the paraduma because you were poda it. And therefore you're going to be chayav for the second shechita of the calf, CALF, the calf, because of also the espino b'yom echad, because the first shechita is a shechita ru'ya, even according to Reb Shimon, and therefore scratch it out of the Mishnah, take out paraduma. And tomorrow, Mishnah, we're going to see that we're going to scratch out a few other things from the Mishnah. This is a very scratchy Mishnah. All right, so let me wish you a great day, and Mitzvah Shem, see you tomorrow. I'm not sure about Wednesday. Let's just think it out. Wednesday is Erev Tisha B'Av, am I right?